From the studios of Staten Island Community Television, you're watching In the Bleachers, the TV show for the world's most passionate sports fans. Hello, everyone. I'm Jaime Hixson. Usually, you see me here with my dear friend Hector Bosa. Actually, we're sort of waiting on him right now because, to be honest with you, I don't even know if he's going to be showing up to the studio or not. So in the meantime, I'm going to be hosting the show solo until he makes his way over here. So in the meantime, we're going to see if we can take your phone calls at 718-727-0143. And we're also going to see if Hector arrives anytime soon. Or maybe he calls into the studio. We're not really sure. With him, you never really know because, to be quite honest with you, this guy is just so attached to the bottle that it's just embarrassing every single time that he either calls into the show or stumbles into the studio in a drunken stupor. So in the meantime, I'm going to wax poetic with you about what's going on in the world of sports. We certainly hope that you had a really awesome Thanksgiving. I certainly did, so it was really cool, and now we can concentrate on the task at hand, which is Christmas time coming up, which means a lot of illuminating of the trees, a lot of Christmas shopping. Of course, today being Cyber Monday, a lot of people are flocking to particular websites to try and do some of the most of the Christmas shopping that they do. Speaking of Christmas shopping, it's the final full week of November, and Major League Baseball is pretty much close to the point where they're going to be doing their winter meetings, and already we have got some really, really hot rumors going across the major leagues right now. The latest juicy rumor that's going on is a possible Robinson Cano return to the Yankees. The Mariners are officially shopping Robinson Cano around to other suitors, potential suitors, and they're trying to get the Yankees and even the Mets involved. This only tells me one thing. The Mariners made a major mistake, and they admitted that they made a major mistake when they gave him that ridiculous 10-year contract, which Cano is officially halfway through now. It's not to say that he's been a terrible player. Robbie has actually been a really good player for the Mariners. He's been a good contact hitter, but at the same time, he's also missed some time with injuries, and then there was his suspension for PED use, which occurred this past season. So now, the question is, which sucker is going to be able to take on the rest of Cano's contract and make any kind of use of him? Yankee fans, of course, already know that he's one of the few guys left over that helped win the Yankees their last title 9 years ago. And on the roster right now, there's still Brett Gardner, there's still CC Sabathia. Now, would a Robbie Cano to the Yankees rumor make any sense for them? It depends. Because for one, now that we know that Didi Gregorius is going to miss the majority of next year because of Tommy John surgery, that means the Yankees are going to have to plug in one or two holes on the infield. In the event that they decide to bring in Robbie Cano, that means they would have to plug him in at second base and then make either Gleyber Torres or someone else the shortstop. My guess is Gleyber Torres is going to be the everyday shortstop for them next season in the event that Gregorius misses all of next year. I still say maybe the Yankees should explore other options as far as second base and shortstop is concerned. Because the way Torres was hitting the ball this past season, it would be really, really difficult for the Yankees to give up on him too soon. Granted, he had a lot of deficiencies at shortstop. He bungled a lot of easy plays on the infield. But at the same time, Torres is a kid that the Yankees could really build on for future seasons. So this is something that the Yankees really, really have to consider. Not only that, but Robbie left the Yankees on some rather bitter terms. He wanted a 10-year deal, and the Yankees would only offer him 7 years, and he felt really slighted by that. But when you think about it, does a 10-year contract really make sense for any athlete in any sport? I mean, look at what has happened to a lot of the guys that had 10-year deals. The first guy that I thought of that had a 10-year deal was David Winfield, who wound up lasting 8 full seasons with the Yankees. Then he missed his 9th year because he was recovering from back surgery. Overall, he had 8 really solid years with the Yanks. But then, at the same time, he also failed miserably in that 1981 World Series with the Yankees against the Dodgers, a series in which the Dodgers wound up winning in 6 games. And then came the infamous Mr. May comments that took place by Mr. Steinbrenner. And then you have to consider also Albert Pujols. Albert Pujols has just completed 7 years of a 10-year deal. While he has also had some pretty solid numbers, he has gotten hurt, and he also has not done enough to lead his team to a championship. He's had 7 years with the Angels, and he has only managed to take them to the playoffs once. He has not made his way to Anaheim as advertised. If anything, I think his best days might be way, way behind him. And then there's the most infamous case, Alex Rodriguez. A-Rod has signed 2 10-year contracts, one with the Texas Rangers and one with the Yankees. Now, with the Rangers, he became an MVP one out of those years. Then he got traded to the Yankees for Alfonso Soriano. Next thing we knew, he wound up winning a couple of MVP awards, yet when it came time to decide whether he wanted to opt in or out after that 7th season, he decided to not only declare his free agency, but sign another 10-year contract. Granted, he wound up having, he finally wound up winning a championship with the Yankees. That was 2009. And he had some tremendous years for them. 2005, 2007, the World Series year. And then when it looked like his career, his best years were way behind him, lo and behold, he wound up breaking out in that 2016 season, I think it was, or was it 2015 season? And he wound up hitting 33 home runs. And then the bottom really dropped out for that guy. And of course, everything was made worse when he admitted to taking steroids all those years ago. So between you and me, that ship really has sailed when it comes to Robbie Cano, and I think the Yankees should really move on elsewhere to try and look for a fill-in second baseman and see what they have to do with shortstop. Now, speaking of trade rumors, the more I've heard Noah Syndergaard's name, the more he's being mentioned in really juicy trade rumors, mostly involving the Padres. The Padres have been looking for a real stud player, not just pitcher, but player that can really catapult them to that next level. Now, the Padres already have baseball's best farm system. They have a plethora of young players, most notably Fernando Tatis Jr., that they could use at their disposal. Unless the Padres want to use Fernando Tatis as trade bait to make a Syndergaard deal done, I would not even bother even mentioning the name of Syndergaard in trade rumors. Besides, Syndergaard has emerged as one of their best pitchers. They're probably their second best pitcher, right behind Jacob deGrom, who, by the way, won the Cy Young Award a couple of weeks ago. And it's gotten to the point where things have become very, very heated in the Major League Baseball offseason. In fact, I've already seen that there's been one deal that's been taking place, and that is Josh Donaldson, the ex-Blue Jay, who wound up signing for $23 million for next season alone with the Braves. And the Braves, who just came off winning a division title, is definitely all in when it comes to trying to get a contender going next season. And I also saw that Brian McCann, who played the last couple of years with the with the Houston Astros, rather. He wound up winning a championship with the Astros after 3 years with the Yankees. He's returned to his original home of the Atlanta Braves, so he got a one-year deal with them. And the Yankees did make a little bit of a minor deal. They wound up getting a right-handed pitcher off of waivers. Parker Bridwell is the pitcher's name. He didn't really see that much action for the Angels, but when he did not necessarily look too good. He gave up 13 earned runs in almost 7 innings for an ERA of over 17.5. And unfortunately, the Yankees had to sacrifice Ronald Torreyes, placing him on waivers. Well, actually placing him, designated him for assignment in order to make room for Parker Bridwell. I'm looking at his numbers for his career. It says he's a Texas native, and he's a tall, skinny guy, 6'4", 185 pounds, and he was drafted in the 9th round by the Baltimore Orioles 8 years ago. Overall, I saw here that he actually pitched one full season for the Angels in 2017. Did pretty well for himself. Made 21 starts, had a 10-3 record and a 3.64 ERA. And then came last year when he only pitched 5 games. I'm looking at his minor league numbers right now. Hasn't necessarily done too well in the minor leagues either. A 34-48 record and a 4.89 ERA. So when you think about it, this kid's pretty much a project for the Yankees. And I see that he throws a 4-seam fastball, but he only averaged about 91 miles an hour this past season, and 93.2 miles an hour for his major league career. So my guess is that they're going to probably make him either a reliever or they might make him a spot starter, or maybe they'll just have him ride the Scranton Wilkes-Barre shuttle starting next season. As far as what else is going on in the world of baseball, we mentioned before that the Winter League, the winter meetings are going to be taking place pretty soon. So we're going to see exactly what these teams are going to be looking for. One other thing to look at. There's been a lot of talk about the kid from the University of Oklahoma, Kyler Murray, who's been playing quarterback for them the last 2 seasons, actually. Kyler Murray has already signed for $5 million with the Oakland A's. And he has made it loud and clear that he is going to go to the A's possibly next season. Now, Murray has had an outstanding year playing for Lincoln Riley, at Oklahoma. He's thrown for 37 touchdowns, over 3,600 yards in the air, and over 800 yards with another 11 touchdowns on the ground. And he's going to lead Oklahoma against Texas for the Big 12 championship on Saturday. He's already really proven himself as a Sooner baseball player. He hit .296 with 10 homers and 47 RBIs with the Sooners last year, while playing center field. And he also spent a little time in the Cape Cod League. So when you think about it, we've had so many guys pass through as two-sport athletes in the past. We've had Bo Jackson and also Deion Sanders, who probably was the most successful of the two-sport athletes, having played 9 years in the majors and 14 years in the NFL. He's now in the Hall of Fame. Can Kyler Murray break ground in Major League Baseball? We're just going to have to wait and see. And I just got word from the NFL that Leonard Fournette, the Jaguars running back, is going to be suspended a game because of conduct detrimental to the team. Speaking of football, let's talk about what happened in the NFL yesterday. Specifically, how the Giants absolutely self-destructed in the latter part of the first half and wound up blowing a 16-point lead against the Eagles and losing the game. This was the game where the Giants really let it get away. They were ahead 19-3. Everything was working for them. Most of all, Saquon Barkley was just tearing the Eagles to pieces. He scored 2 touchdowns against them and had 94 yards on the ground in the first half alone. Why did the Giants suddenly go away from their running game in the second half and decide to go all conservative? If anything, not only were they shredding the Eagles with the running game, Eli Manning was actually playing well. And then at the very end of the first half, he winds up committing a really silly turnover, which just goes to show you that he went back to some really bad habits. That's number one. Number two, could it be that maybe Odell Beckham Jr. was onto something when he said that maybe they should have gone to the pass a little bit more in the second half? Because when you think about it, the Eagles did not have a lot of their horses defensively because many of their guys were hurt. And they did nothing to try and attack the weak Eagles secondary, which was missing a lot of guys. And then the next thing we know, the Eagles do a complete about-face. Carson Wentz winds up having a terrific second half, and the Eagles come from behind to win the game. If this doesn't show you that the Giants really do need another overhaul for next season, I don't know what does. Because it's gotten to the point where not only has their offensive line been a complete and utter mess the majority of the year, Eli Manning has suddenly forgotten how to look for the open man on the field, because there were times when he had guys open and he completely overlooked them. I don't even know what to say. I mean, it's only going to go from bad to worse for the Giants, because the schedule is not going to be any more forgiving for them, because they still have the Cowboys and the Redskins. There's also the matter of the Indianapolis Colts, who they have to play for the rest of the season. And they also have the Tennessee Titans, and next week they have the Bears. They're hosting the Bears at Giants Stadium, and it's gotten to the point where I think you might want to officially say curtains for the G-men for the rest of the season. Not that we didn't do that already after the first half of the year, but after a modest 2-game winning streak, we've now seen the Giants for who they really are. Dreadful offensively, with a putrid offensive line and a defense that cannot stop anybody. Now, as far as the Jets are concerned, let's face facts. The Jets are also who we exactly thought they were. A team with a quarterback who right now is hurt, and a backup quarterback who has no business being in the league in the first place. Josh McCown was, let's face facts, Josh McCown just could not measure up to Tom Brady in the slightest yesterday. Even though the game was tied at 13 for more than a half, you really did have the sense that this was the Patriots' game all along. Because for one, Josh McCown wound up committing a really silly turnover, which just killed the Giants' chances all along. And for another, Tom Brady was just going through that Jet secondary like it was nothing. Third, the Patriots suddenly discovered their running game all over again. And it was James White, a guy that you barely hear about, who wound up having an outstanding game for them just yesterday. So as far as the Jets are concerned, the same thing can be said about the Jets that we did about the Giants. And that is, quite frankly, all they can do is play out the string. And seeing who the Jets have left over, the schedule is not going to be kind to them either. The Titans, the Bills are second time. The Texans, the Packers, the Patriots a second time. All I could say is I shudder to think how bad it's going to get for the Jets the last 5 games of the season, because just when you thought things could not get any worse for the Jets, then you see what happened yesterday. Elsewhere around the NFL, once again, the Chicago Bears wound up continuing to surprise people. They wound up playing the Lions in the Lions' annual Thanksgiving Day game, and it took a pick 6 by the Bears' defense to win it for them. And the more I see the Bears, the more I'm thinking to myself, I think they're going to be somebody that no one is going to want to play when January rolls around. And I see that the Cowboys look like they're starting to get back on track, and it took an Amari Cooper 180-yard game for the Cowboys to win. So now the Cowboys are tied for the division lead, the Eastern Division lead, with the Redskins with identical 6-5 records. And this past Thanksgiving evening, the Saints raised their winning streak to 10 games after a victory over the Falcons. By far, if the Saints are not the best team in the entire NFL, they're definitely the best team in the NFC right now, especially with the way that they dismantled the Rams in that game a couple of weeks ago. And it just goes to show you, when a team plays a big game, usually you look for a letdown or maybe a trap game of some kind to make their way in. The Saints have not fallen for that trap yet, because they have just dismantled their past 2 opponents. And it's looking more and more like the Saints are going to be the team to beat in the NFC portion of the playoffs right now. as far as other games that were of importance, what a big win for the Seahawks, getting a last-second field goal to beat the Panthers. Do not count the Seahawks out yet because, quite frankly, they're going to be really dangerous these last 5 regular season games. I wouldn't be surprised if they may be challenged for that first wild card spot when you think about it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think I got the signal from Kenny that we have a caller. Is that right, Kenny?
Yes, we have a caller.
Is that you, Hector?
Yes. What makes you think that the Seahawks have a chance at anything right now?
Because they have one of the best quarterbacks in the game. His name's Russell Wilson. That's why.
Because when we spoke to each other last, you said that the Super Bowl champions, the Super Bowl, your predictions would have been if you had to do the playoffs right now.
Yeah.
You said that it would be, I forgot, it would be Pittsburgh and the Seahawks would win. Right?
Yeah.
And then you said in the East it would be, I forgot the order that we had it in. And you did it really well, too. You said, because we talked about if you took the records that they had now and knowing the records that you think they may have, who you think would be in the playoffs right now. And you did it really well, too. But do you see a sleeper going to the Super Bowl?
A sleeper going to the Super Bowl?
Yeah.
Probably Seattle.
Seattle would be your sleeper.
I think they would be the sleeper team coming out of the NFC because as long as Russell Wilson is still taking snaps from center, the Seahawks are going to be dangerous for any team the last quarter of the regular season. And I'll tell you right now, the way he's still making plays with his feet, he's going to give teams a lot of trouble. He just needs a really good running back to support him.
Now that would be in the East, correct?
That would be in the NFC.
Oh, in the NFC. Now what about the other division? Who would be a sleeper there?
In the AFC?
Yep.
Right now, I'm seeing some really good things coming from Baltimore. Ever since Joe Flacco got hurt and they went to Lamar Jackson, who they drafted number 1 this past April, he has been rock solid for them. Not only that, but he's got a really good running game to go to. I think the Ravens, plus the defense that they have, they're really going to scare some people the last quarter of the year.
Who's your biggest disappointment right now? The AFC and the NFC in football.
The biggest disappointment?
Yes. That you thought they were going to make the playoffs or they had a chance and they just totally went.
Jacksonville, by far. Everybody thought Jacksonville was going to be a Super Bowl contender. They have not even gotten out of their own way. They have a 7-game losing streak, and their quarterback, Blake Bortles, has reverted to some really, really bad habits like he committed a couple of years ago. And because of that, he's now gotten benched for the rest of the year. And now that they have to go to their backup quarterback, which, if I'm not mistaken, is I have to find out exactly who the backup is on there, but now they have to go to their backup quarterback.
Right.
Just to try and salvage the last quarter of the season.
Now, is that in the NFC or the AFC?
That's in the AFC.
Now, the NFC, which one? Who's your biggest disappointment there?
By far, the biggest disappointment in the NFC has to be Atlanta. I mean, this was the year that they had a chance to really make a claim on hosting their own Super Bowl, because this year the Super Bowl is going to be in Atlanta. But the Falcons have not been able to get out of their own way this year. They've had guys hurt. Their running game has suffered because of the injuries. Not only that, but the defense has been a major letdown for them.
And the funny thing is, with the Giants, that was an atrocity in itself.
Oh,
Because they still have a chance of making the playoffs mathematically. They do, but I don't think.
Well, they'd have to get a lot of help in order for that to happen, but there will not be any playoffs whatsoever for that team this year. Right now, all they should think about is just playing for pride.
And rebuilding. How are they going to rebuild for next year? And will that staff be there next year?
That's a really good question. I'm not really sure because right now, Pat Shurmur has not done anything to distinguish himself as a head coach for that team. He's shown no originality with that offense. He's been extremely conservative. Quite frankly, I don't know what he's doing there.
And maybe they got him because of his conservativeness, considering they got Saquon Barkley.
No, they actually got him because of the stuff that he did with Minnesota's offense last year with a journeyman quarterback. We thought that he was going to turn things around with the Giants. Not even close. The only bright spot on that Giants offense right now is Barkley. He's approaching 1,000 yards rushing and maybe 800 to 900 yards receiving for the season. He's been the only bright spot on that entire roster this year. Everybody else has been either a question mark or a complete and utter disappointment.
And about the Jets, too.
Oh, brother.
The same way, do you think that they're a big disappointment or they should have been better? Or do you give them, let's say, next year? Or do you give the staff to be there next year?
The Jets have been a disappointment for 8 seasons now. And between you and me, Todd Bowles is a goner. He's had 4 years with this team, and not once has he taken them to a single playoff game. Not only that, but the Jets may talk about how much they like him, but I think he's lost the respect of the players in the locker room. He has not done one single thing to show any kind of fire or authority to be laid down in that locker room.
Now, if you had your choice of getting a coach for the Giants and the Jets, who would be best suited for? What coach?
That's a really good question. I mean, far be it from me to say that they should get a college guy, but I'm hearing maybe John Harbaugh might be on shaky ground in Baltimore. If John Harbaugh gets suddenly let go by the Ravens, why not the Jets maybe make a play for John Harbaugh?
What do you see in him? But what do you see in him that he would say, I want this guy even though he was let go by Baltimore?
Defense. He's a defensive-minded coach. But then again, the same thing was said about Todd Bowles, and look where they are right now. Not only that, but the Jets have had John Harbaugh has had much more to work with on the Ravens than he has anywhere else. I mean, keep in mind, he had Ray Lewis for a long, long time. And he also had Ed Reed, and he also has Terrell Suggs, too. And, of course, on offense, there's Joe Flacco, and now he has that rookie Lamar Jackson to work with. For a little while, he had Ray Rice as a running back, but ever since he got suspended indefinitely, the running game hasn't been terrible, but he really hasn't had that franchise running back for the team to go to. Let's see what he could do with a team like this. Maybe he should be given some kind of authority over personnel just so he can have an idea what kind of team he wants.
Well, the thing is, if he's having so many problems with the Ravens and he's got, let's say, better players than the Jets, I mean, who would you consider to have better players, the Jets or the Ravens?
Oh, the Ravens have much better players than the Jets do.
So how would he be better with the Jets even though you have less talent with the Jets? Or do you consider the Jets having a lot of talent? Potential talent.
They have a lot of good young players. I mean, when you think about it, Sam Darnold is going to be their quarterback of the future. Defensively is where they really have a chance to shine. With Leonard Williams and Jamal Adams as well. Darren Lee also at linebacker. Defensively, the players are there. It's just a matter of executing. Offensively, they have a ton of work to do. They need a number one receiver. They need a number one running back. I mean, Isaiah Crowell has been okay, and so has Bilal Powell, but they need somebody to get the ball 20 to 25 times a game to take the pressure off. And most of all, they need a number one receiver because, quite frankly, Jermaine Kearse and Robbie Anderson are not doing it for me.
And what about the Giants? Who should they get as a coach?
Maybe get a really smart, tough-minded offensive or defensive coordinator. My guess is they could probably get someone who could be a really good teacher of defense for them because right now...
Barry Switzer, how's him?
Oh, brother. Perish the thought, please. I don't think so. I mean, he's won a championship, but he was so out of his element coaching in the NFL. I mean, it was painfully obvious that Oklahoma was where he belonged.
There are very few college guys that could actually make it into the National Football League. Has there? Now, because I know you have a better memory than I.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think there's been a lot of coaches from the college ranks that have made it, or should I say succeeded, in the NFL?
Oh, yeah, there have been quite a few of those. If I'm not mistaken, one of them was, you know what? Let me see if I could do a little research on that.
Oh, I'll put it to you like this. Has there been more NFL coaches, college coaches that have succeeded in the NFL, or have they not succeeded?
College coaches who succeeded more in the NFL or less in the NFL?
Which one do you think?
I can think of one. Lou Holtz. Failed miserably with the Jets. Another, Nick Saban. Had 2 years with the Dolphins. Failed miserably after his second season. Another, Bobby Petrino. 2 years with the Falcons. He could not wait to get out of there and go back to college.
So you would say that there would be more successes in the NFL from coaches that have come out of college, or do you think there's been less success for people that coaches that have gone into the NFL?
There've been a lot more successful. If anything, there've been more successful college coaches who stayed in college than anywhere else. I actually have a couple of names who've been able to make it both in college and in the NFL. One of them was right here in our neck of the woods for many years, Tom Coughlin.
Yeah.
Coached at Boston College for 3 years and took him to a couple of bowl games. Of course, Barry Switzer not only won a national title at Oklahoma, but he won a Super Bowl with the Cowboys.
Yeah, but look at the team he had.
Well, obviously.
That team was built to win. I mean, come on.
And there's also Jim Harbaugh. Took the 49ers to the Super Bowl and is now a miracle worker at Michigan. There was also Paul Brown, who not only did he coach the Cleveland Browns and the Cincinnati Bengals, he was the first coach of the Cleveland Browns, by the way, when they made their way into the league in 1946. And he was also the first head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals in 1967. A lot of people don't know this, but Paul Brown led Ohio State to a national championship back in the 40s. And then,
wow.
if you want to talk old school again, Don Coryell, the guy who led the old Air Coryell teams on the Cardinals in the 70s and 80s. Don Coryell won 104 games for San Diego State for 12 years. And here's a guy that you never thought would have to be a head coach in the college ranks. Dick Vermeil. He coached the Eagles.
Oh, wow.
He coached the Eagles and the Rams to Super Bowls. He took the Rams to a championship. He also coached the Chiefs. He also spent 2 years at UCLA.
Well, Jimmy Johnson did the same thing, right?
Yep. Jimmy Johnson coached Oklahoma State. He took Miami to one national title, then took the Cowboys to a pair of Super Bowls. Another guy to look at, Pete Carroll. Not only did Pete Carroll was head coach of the Jets and then the Seahawks, took the Seahawks to a pair of Super Bowls, and of course, Pete Carroll led USC to a couple of national titles. Unfortunately, I think both of them wound up getting taken away because of violations.
Yeah, I think he's trying to get back into the NFL too.
That's a really hot rumor.
Now, do you see him going to the Giants or the Jets?
Jimmy Johnson, you mean?
No, Pete Carroll.
Pete Carroll's still coaching the Seahawks.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. I thought he was coaching the college ranks because I know there was a hot rumor that one of those coaches that was an NFL coach is doing very well in college ranks, and he's been wanting to come back to the NFL, but they won't give him a shot. Now, do you think it's harder to get a, let's say, a sit down if you're a college football player or a basketball college player?
Are you talking about recruiting?
No, I'm talking about being a coach. Because I see a lot more basketball coaches. They're not recycling like such as in the NBA. Mm-hmm. They don't recycle as much as they used to. The same old coaches.
Yep.
Because in the NBA, they used to recycle the same old coaches all over again. Mm-hmm. And the same guys used to coach, and they just went to different teams.
Yeah.
Now it seems that they're going more to the college ranks. Mm-hmm. Do you see any college guy from basketball coaching in the NBA anytime soon? Do you see Patrick Ewing coaching in the NBA?
Man, it'd be great if he would come back to the Knicks. That would be the greatest public relations find that the Knicks could ever make.
They could have done that.
We actually have a college guy in the NBA ranks right now. It's Billy Donovan. He's coaching Oklahoma City. And he's doing very well, I might add.
He's a great coach, but he was a horrible player.
A good college player for Providence, and yes, he could not last 5 minutes in the NBA.
Yeah, he played scared, that guy. He played scared. I don't know what was it with him, but it was just too funny. But
you know what college guy who recently got fired is trying to get back in the NBA? Rick Pitino.
Oh yeah. I could see him. I could see somebody getting, but he has a luggage on him because of what happened to him.
Mm-hmm. If anything, he might get blackballed from the sport altogether because of what happened.
You know, there'll probably be some team that needs a coach that needs someone to bring in the people. Mm-hmm. Hey, maybe the Seattle Supersonics if they ever come back.
Here's the interesting thing. There's more of a possibility of a hockey team returning to Seattle or making their debut in Seattle than a basketball team returning to Seattle. And if I'm not mistaken, I think they're supposed to I think they already decided that there was going to be a 32nd NHL team making its debut in the 2020s.
Really?
Yeah.
Where?
It was going to be in Seattle, and they were going to play, I think, at Key Arena, which was supposed to have been the subject of reconstruction for quite a while. And that's why the Seahawks left for Oklahoma City in the first place, because they couldn't get a new arena.
So how does that balance out? Because some teams have, what is it? One has 5, the other one has 6 teams.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it goes in each division?
Yeah.
It's an odd number?
Mm-hmm. Once they get that 32nd team in the NHL, they're going to balance it out. 16 and 16 each conference, and 8 teams in each division.
Now, do you think it liquefies the talent, or do you think it brings more talent?
It'll probably, it might be a combination of both, because when you think about it, you see a lot of young players making their marks around the league. When the Golden Knights made their debut last year, they decided they wanted to win immediately. So they were rating every single roster, which was how the expansion draft is designed. They're supposed to pick at least one player from each team. They decided they wanted guys that were going to help them win immediately, and they did just that, and they went all the way to the finals. And it was the way that they went to the finals, too. I mean, they just blitzed every single opponent that came across them in the regular season. They got great goaltending from Marc-Andre Fleury, who won a championship with the Penguins. They got really good snipers. They wound up helping them in the playoffs. So my guess is, I'm not sure if Seattle wants to go that route where they want to win immediately, or maybe they want to build for their future by including some much younger players. But when you think about it, I think it's a combination of young guys and veterans that they're going to want to do.
And speaking of hockey also, that's another division, I would say, that always, I'll put it to you like this. In the NFL, are there more recycling coaches, or are they more new coaches?
Oh, they recycle coaches all the time, man. I mean, how do you think Barry Trotz got the Islander job? Barry Trotz left Washington because he wanted to explore some new opportunities, and he wound up getting the Islanders gig. And when you think about it, even though the record doesn't really say much, I mean, they have a 12-8-2 record. The Islanders are playing some pretty decent hockey.
That's true. The Islanders are playing decent hockey. And the Rangers and the Devils, all metropolitan teams, are actually doing very well.
Yeah, except for the Devils, because unfortunately the Devils have slumped pretty badly recently after a 4-0 start. The Rangers are okay. Unfortunately, they lost a couple of games in a row. They're actually playing tonight. Right now they're playing the Senators, and the game's tied at 1. The Islanders are also playing tonight. They're tied with the Capitals at 1 after 1. And the Devils are playing in South Florida against the Panthers. They're scoreless after 1.
You know, and who does the most recycling, you think? NFL, baseball, football? Which one of those? Or basketball? Who does the most recycling of coaches, you think?
Of coaches? I think it's the NHL. You would not believe how many guys bounce around from one team to another. I see Peter Laviolette go from the Islanders to the Hurricanes to the Flyers. He's had maybe 4 or 5 different jobs in the league.
Mm.
And then you see...
baseball, there's not that many, is there?
Very few. In baseball, there's very few. I mean, there's a reason why guys like Mike Scioscia last 19 years on the same job with the Angels. And then you have the NFL, where Bill Belichick has made his mark for 19 years on the Patriots. Marvin Lewis has been with the Bengals. This is his 16th year. Pete Carroll has been with the Seahawks. This is 8 years now.
Wow.
9 years, actually.
I mean, at least they know how to recycle guys.
Yeah.
Bring out the best in them and start anew. And you have the GMs and the owners that actually have faith in these guys to actually do something.
Mm-hmm.
Because when it comes to the Giants, they used to have the little bit of faith, but I don't know what's going on with them. And the Jets management, not management, owners, they're like the Mets owners. They don't have that much oomph.
Well, at least the Giants have been able to literally keep it in the family ever since the beginning, because the Mara family has run the Giants since 1925, which was the year that they were founded. Now there's the Tisch family that's helping out with things. One thing that's certain about the G-men, you can always count on the Mara family to be there. As far as the Jets are concerned, they've had guys from Sonny Werblin to Leon Hess, both of whom were not very smart about football. Now there's Woody Johnson, or at least lately there was Woody Johnson. Now he's doing his ambassadorship to Europe, and I think one of his brothers is taking over things. But when it comes to incompetent ownership, you think of the Jets first, then there's the Lions, then there's the Arizona Cardinals, and before Steve Ballmer took over things, there was the Clippers, and of course you have the Knicks, and then and before Mikhail Prokhorov took over, there was the Jersey Nets, which had the Secaucus Seven and Joe Taub, all of whom were a complete and utter mess as owners.
Do you remember the list I sent you? There was a text I sent you about basketball, how they rated
Yeah.
the basketball teams.
Yeah. And
What
quite
did you think of those?
that was about as contradictory as I could ever see a writer ever do for an article. I mean, how do you give the Atlanta Hawks a B plus and the Knicks a B plus? It seemed like the only thing that they got right was the Cavaliers, and they got a resounding F.
Well, I can tell you about the Knicks, and that is they have a nice core of young players that have to develop.
Well, the young players are there, but collectively, as a 15-player unit, they're just horrendous.
Yeah. No,
There's a reason.
Right.
There's a reason why they're 7-14.
No, you're absolutely right. And well, how is it? Well, at least they won 3 straight games against good teams, so that's a count for something. And as long as they stay close to other teams and they don't get blown out, I think it's still a win for them because it's still a young team, and very rarely do you expect a young team to hit that gate, go to the playoffs right away.
I hate to tell you this, Hector, but one of those teams that you talked about, which was the Celtics, they're not a good team. They're barely a 500 squad right now. They're lost. And that other team that you mentioned, the Memphis Grizzlies, they're just okay right now. The Golden State Warriors, a team that has slumped badly, they're just okay right now. The only good team that's out there is probably Toronto, which no one saw coming.
What was the last team that you can remember in basketball that had a core young team and shot through to the playoffs and made it to the Superstars?
And made it to the finals, you mean?
Yeah, made it to the finals. A young team that you didn't expect. They were very young, and they just shot through.
The last team that I could think of was probably Jordan's first NBA title team on the Bulls. Because when the Bulls won their first title, Jordan was 28, Scottie Pippen was only 26, Horace Grant was only 26, John Paxson, I think, was 28 at the time. B.J. Armstrong, who was one of their really important backup players, he was just a baby. He was only 23, about 23, 24 years of age. So that's one team that I could think of.
Were they expected to win?
Pretty much so, yeah, because at that time the Pistons dynasty was starting to crumble, and the Celtics were basically in their going through not necessarily their lean years, but the big three that they had, which was Bird and Parrish and McHale, they were really starting to show their age at that time.
Mm-hmm. What do you think about the rating that the Nets, the Brooklyn Nets got?
Quite frankly, I'm stunned that they get a B plus or a B minus, because when you think about it, this team is not really supposed to be ready to do anything right now. The only reason why they've won 8 games this year is, 1, they were actually able to do some stuff defensively, and 2, they were able to get really great contributions from kids like D'Angelo Russell and Spencer Dinwiddie, who right now might be the best player that they have. If Karis LeVert did not get injured recently, I think the Nets might have won a couple more games, especially that Sixer game yesterday. They really could have used a guy like Karis LeVert to win that game yesterday.
Right now, when it comes to is there any college player out there that stands out that can help the Nets and the Knicks right now?
Yeah, Zion Williamson.
For the next draft.
Well, for the Nets, they really need that one go-to guy, that one scoring machine that could really catapult them to the next level. The Knicks, I think they need major bench help, and I still say they need a point guard in the worst way. Now, with that said, the best available player in the college game right now might be Zion Williamson from Duke.
And for the Nets?
For the Nets, that's a good question. I mean, take your choice. Williamson, his teammate R.J. Barrett, who's also a really good player. You know, I'm thinking Shamori Pons decided to return to St. John's for at least one more year. And so far, he's picked up where he's left off last year. I'm thinking he could be a real diamond in the rough for any one of the New York squads, because every time I see this kid play, he is a beast. The one thing that's hurting him right now is his height. Teams like their point guards to be tall. They like them to be at least 6'4". And Shamori Pons is only 6'1". He's going to get towered over, and he's going to have major problems trying to find a good jump shot in the pro game. That's why he was told to go back to school.
Well, it's 7:59. I will talk to you later.
Thank you.
Have a good night.
Thanks for calling, Hector. And thanks to you guys for watching at home. We certainly hope that you had a wonderful, wonderful Thanksgiving. So we're going to be seeing you in the month of December, starting next Monday night. So for everyone here, I'm Jamie. We hope to see you next time. Good night, everyone.